Hi, welcome to Gruesome Twosome Reviews. I am Jay Gruesome.
And I'm Jay Putrid.
And this time around, we're going to go with another movie in modern horror cinema. And this one is 2015's Darling by director Mickey Keating. This movie is about a lonely young woman's descent into madness after becoming the caretaker of a mysterious New York mansion with a dark history. Very cool.
Sounds like a very good premise.
Yes. First, we'll go on with our cons, then our pros, and kind of just go on a little rant at the end. But overall, we did actually enjoy this movie.
Yes.
So, despite the fact that we do have our cons, don't get any, ideas that we didn't actually enjoy the movie, because we very much enjoyed it, especially for it being kind of like a highlight, in my opinion, of modern horror.
And if you hear a bell in the background, it's just our new kitten Cleo playing with her toy.
Corey's going to mention our cats, especially for you newcomers. So, we'll get started with our cons. Things that we just really didn't care for in the movie. So far, we don't know much about the director. I haven't seen any of his other works.
Same here. I think this is his fourth film that he's directed.
So, he is a new up-and-coming director. And so far, we've only seen Darling, so we can only go off of Darling on what his other movies may be like. But, knowing directors, they could totally do... This could be out of his element, or, it could be totally different from what he normally does. So, if you have a little bit more to say about the director, comment below.
Or if you even recommend, any of his works, we would love the recommendations so we can, watch something new, and maybe if we like it or hate it, we'll review it either way.
Exactly. That's a great way to do it. Okay, so we'll start with the cons. We didn't particularly care for the music video edits that they had randomly thrown in there. We understand that it's a movie about the descent into madness and focuses around insanity, but I think things like that are so dated. I don't find that shocking anymore. It's kind of like, I don't think I ever did, but it's kind of like, it reminds me of 2005. It's so 2005.
I remember Saw once.
I remember those Saw movies. Okay.
Personally, those edits didn't take away anything from the movie to me, just because I understood where it was coming from. But it just gets boring after a while. It's not shocking, and I feel like the reason why those edits are on there is to give you more of a grasp on how unhinged this person is becoming as this movie progresses. And then not only that, but to actually pick up the pace, because it is a slow movie.
Oh, it is.
But overall, I feel maybe just some restraint probably would have helped it, but for the most part, I don't think it really did anything for the film. If anything, I think it did kind of hinder it a little.
Yeah, I agree. It's just kind of a cheap way to express that type of feeling and what the movie is trying to convey.
And to pick up the pace.
Yeah, I agree. It's still kind of cheap to me.
And it's not a really long movie either.
It's not. I
think it's like an hour and 16 minutes.
Yeah, it's a very reasonable time. And though it's a little bit of a slow burner, there are parts that are very, fast paced, I'll say, without giving away too much, because we do recommend this movie.
Yes.
Now on to our next con. There's some, random metal music thrown in there towards the end of the movie, and I get why people use it, and I think that's another cheap thing that I really hate about modern cinema. It's just, we get it, it's supposed to be a movie about a crazy person, but why throw in the metal? come on, like, no one's shocked by metal anymore. It's not the freaking, like, 1980s. Like,
Or
no
even
one's...
better yet, it's not 2002.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, why even throw that in there? Like, no one thinks that's crazy anymore. Especially, like, you know, we do have things like, you know, access to YouTube and stuff like that. Everybody...
The internet exists.
The internet exists, so...
you can find disturbing music.
Yeah, why does
internet.
everybody, like, still think that metal is disturbing? It's very dumb to me, but I really wish they hadn't put that in there, because I was just like, okay.
I will go off on that a little more once we get to the pros of the movie.
Yes. We did say, as we were speaking about this, that they should have just continued with the soundtrack they already had going.
Yeah.
From what I remember, it was, like, kind of just, you know, very dark, like...
atmospheric,
yeah,
very unnerving.
It is. It adds to the tension of the movie, so when you throw this metal in there, it's kind of like, okay, we get it. Metal's crazy.
Any more cons with this movie?
Yes. Now, those were very minor, and I think the biggest thing for me...
Honestly, those are very minor. Like,
those are super minor. Yeah. We're just nitpicking, because that's what we do.
We do have to find some cons.
We do. We can't just be like, all right, we liked a movie, so it's the greatest movie ever. We're never going to do that.
We gotta be a little more realistic about these things.
Yeah, we are. So I think the biggest problem with the movie, and it might have affected the reception of the movie itself, was some of the actresses acting through certain scenes. Like, there were things that were super convincing and I thought were really great. So it's weird that this falls in the pros and cons of what we thought about this movie. But there were some scenes where I was just like, okay, like, you know, it might have not been her fault, the actress, personally, but it's
might
just
have been the way she was directed, or
yeah, like, you know, you need to be a little crazier during this scene, and I think that actually hurt the movie, because it could have been very, very believable all throughout, and there is one particular scene where she shines through completely, but then there are other scenes, for those who have seen it, there's a particular bar scene,
yeah,
where she's having a conversation with another person, and it's just so unconvincing.
It's like this is her first conversation with the person ever.
Yeah, and she's angry about it the entire time. So if I personally met somebody like that, I would completely avoid them. But this guy's like a fucking idiot. He just like goes along with her and thinks that how she's behaving is okay. Like, he's never met another person in his life, and he's like, oh well,
like a third-rate Haley Joel Osment looking motherfucker.
Okay, but all joking aside, that did hurt the movie in my opinion, but it didn't make it into a terrible movie, because it so could have gone there. Like, if she kept that up, I probably would have walked away.
Maybe if how she, like, because in the beginning she's talking to the woman who actually owns this place, and she's very quiet and very mousy, very reserved, and I feel like if she actually kept that, like if they had her keep
I would have been so convinced.
Yes. And then there's a scene in, like, during that bar where she breaks down, and I feel like that would have been so convincing.
If she kept that mousy little petite, like, oh my god, it's
and
okay,
then just
have a
like
nice
that
person.
that breakdown in the bathroom,
yeah.
you'd just be like, oh fuck, this is intense.
She's crazy, but the way she was acting,
her mask of sanity is slipping.
Yes, our favorite part. But the way that it was, the way it actually did come out was not very believable,
yeah.
And I was mildly annoyed with it. Like, all right, again, you're a crazy person.
Yeah, it's instead of being like, oh shit, this person's unhinged, it's like, oh, this person is crazy.
Just like,
couldn't see that coming.
Those fucking edgelords that you meet in public. It's like, oh, Yeah, I'm avoiding this person.
Yeah.
This person's basically saying they might as well just be wearing a t-shirt that says I'm crazy.
Do not disturb.
Yeah, do not disturb.
Don't disturb.
This is a Walmart shirt.
Already disturbed.
Oh,
then they start playing Disturbed.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Because, you gotta throw... we're mean.
Okay.
Okay,
back on track.
all seriousness. Now we can finally move on to the pros. We're not completely mean when it comes to this movie, so sorry, Mickey Keating. We hope we're saying your name right. Yes, the pros. What we do actually praise about this movie is that it is an ambitious movie that plays on the imagination with fears such as, like, loneliness and, slipping sanity. And that's always a really touchy subject, especially, mental illness has a huge awareness, especially now with things like the internet and social media. It's that, like, to portray it on film is a very challenging thing to do. So it was very ambitious.
To me, it was very... If I had to compare this movie to anything, I would have to compare it to Roman Polanski's Repulsion, because it does deal with isolation, agoraphobia, just being unhinged, being completely antisocial. It is shot in black and white, which also did very well with the cinema. Like, it helped the cinematography and helped portray New York in a different way. Darling, not Repulsion, but it really did remind me. It had a lot of strains from Repulsion in this movie, and that's I was very impressed with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those themes we can actually relate to personally, because even doing these videos is a big step for us, being like super antisocial people, and just to put it out there, it's like, this is pretty difficult for us, so... Yeah, themes
it is
like,
fun though, I am not going to lie.
Themes like that we can really relate to on a personal level. To see this on film is really, that's pretty special, that someone can actually, be ballsy enough to try and attempt stuff like this. So good job, Mickey Keating. Praise 1 for you for Darling. Another thing is that we really love the chapter aspect.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, that's how life is anyway. If you look back on your past, you can kind of almost put it into chapters like a book. And this is a great way to represent the descent into madness. And it's a very clean way to do it too, instead of, it could have been like super chaotic, but having that chapter aspect is like, oh, what's gonna come up next, like the names of the chapters and shit. So it's like, this is a really cool aspect. I really, really liked that.
And, another thing that I really liked about having that chapter aspect was going back to having this house with a dark history to it. It's literally following the story of this person in this house. So it leaves it open to multiple stories of multiple people in this single house. I think that was a really good idea to just to present this film in chapters, like this person's like sanity slipping in chapters, because it does make sense, and it also does play on, is it the house, is it the person, what's really going on? Is it both, maybe?
Yes, the house adds to the mystery of what is really going on in this movie, because there are and we're trying not to give too much away, because like we said, we really do recommend this movie, and it is on Netflix currently, so you should go check it out
before it's gone.
Yeah, do it before it's gone, because Netflix does have a habit of doing things like that, taking away our good films. But yeah, the house overall adds this a very creepy aspect, especially being alone in a big house. And it just leaves so much up to the imagination that throughout the movie, you're even imagining what could happen next. So I think that is really, really great.
It's really engaging.
It is. Like, it goes back to the entire ambition of the film. It's really cool. We've already touched on the cinematography, the black and white feeling of it. And what is it with black and white always making things seem a lot eerier than what they could be? One thing that's semi-spoiler is a certain killing scene that the actress completely shone through. That was her performance right there. And I feel like that actually made me forgive the bar scene and how she was acting there, because she was so convincing in this scene. This is her shining moment in the movie, and it was really fucking scary.
And it's very brutal and intense.
Yeah, just the look on her face the entire time that she's doing this, it's like that is horrifying. It's super horrifying. So you know, he was right in saying that if she kept this like little mousy personality, had the quick breakdown in the bathroom, went back to being like mousy, and then this thing happened, holy shit, I would have just like praised the hell out of this movie completely. Like, I wouldn't have really anything bad to say besides being a nitpicker at this.
This would be a movie I would highly recommend if that was the case. I do recommend it, but not as highly as I probably would. But,
yeah, it's a good movie though. Yeah. Now to our last thing, we were very torn in between putting this as a pro or con, and it's the open ending of the movie. I would say do not expect too many answers or questions answered throughout the movie, because
it raises so many questions.
Yeah, with an open ending, that could be a good thing. And I think that with that open ending, it also affected the reception of the movie overall, because we did see that IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes gave it a relatively low score, but, you know, there is the whole aspect that it wasn't a theater release of a movie. It's that tends to happen anyway, and they seem to be very harsh on movies that are independent.
Yeah.
So we can't really count that, but, you know, personally, I wouldn't score it that low, but I wouldn't say it's the greatest movie that I've seen in the past years, particularly 2015, which is when I think The Witch came out, and that was the best movie of that year, and hands down best movie of that year, and
one of the best modern horror films in cinema history as of recent. I mean, I'm sorry, you just don't get any better than that, and I honestly hope it can get better than that, but as it's been turning out,
we're just kind of we go at watching movies with a very open mind, just because we never know what to expect, and you don't want to be way too pessimistic going to watch a new horror movie, and
you don't want to be too optimistic too.
Yeah, so when it comes to this movie, we will admit that there may be unanswered questions, especially with an open ending.
Especially with basically 3 endings, because you have one ending, the end credits, and then after credits.
Yeah, that's another thing. Please stick around for those. Like I said, it could be a good thing, because leaving an open ending to horror plays on your imagination even further, and that's always a really cool thing. Like, you know, had it not been for I would say the additional endings, like if they just left it at 1, I would have been fine, and I would have actually thought about the movie way after the ending credits, but I felt that adding to that ending kind of hurt the movie, kind of hurt the I guess the reaction I had initially, because at the end I just sat there and let it all sink in, and then it continued, and it didn't necessarily need to.
I really enjoyed the fact that this film raises so many questions, and at the end it doesn't really answer anything, and then you get the ending after one person's story is done and another person's story begins. I really like that, just mainly because it does leave open to the question, does this house attract a certain type of person or personality?
Or is it the house itself that makes these people descend into madness?
Like, you can't really tell. And personally, I would have liked at least one question answered.
Yeah,
But
whether
even
it's the
at
person
that,
or the house.
yeah.
Because it is very unclear throughout most of the movie.
Or if the house has some hand in these people's like a mask of sanity slipping, because you find out that, you know, maybe this person wasn't really up to, like, wasn't really all there to begin with. So like, it personally, I just kind of brainstormed and like, well, maybe this house attracts these kinds of people because it needs that energy to like survive.
Yeah, it's
But
like the
maybe
vulnerability of these
yeah.
people, especially being antisocial. You're going to, be more vulnerable, especially if you're on your own a lot.
But maybe if that element was actually like explored a little more, like it didn't
I would
have
really
to be
enjoy
like
that.
it didn't really have to be spelled out, honestly, and it didn't have to be like right there, but to have some subtlety and to just kind of nod at that and just it would have been good. Like, I really would have loved that. Another thing I do want to talk about when we're talking about pros too is the sound design of this film.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very thick, atmospheric sound design. It's very ambient. It's very foreboding. It sets the mood and it sets the pacing well. And going back to the con of having that like metal music on there, it just really takes away from everything that they're building up. It's like, wouldn't it be more suiting to have something more dark and chaotic? Like, you know, we have the internet, you know, there is like, people know things about like experimental music now, especially when you think about movies like theatrical movies that came out like Insidious and stuff like that. And I will say this, I don't like the movie, but I will give credit to Sinister for actually, you know, exploring that. The first Sinister.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool too, because I don't like the movie either,
Yeah.
and the sequels can... Yeah, we don't like the first, we're not going to like the sequels.
Yeah. But even they used experimental music to their advantage to, you know, to just like highlight this creepy atmosphere. And like we said, no one gets shocked with metal music anymore. At least with experimental music, you're more disturbed because it hits at a more primordial level, I guess.
Yeah, and
it touches
almost like
deep down. Like, what's scarier, a scary sound or scary music?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, for all you future filmmakers, please stay away from the metal music. It's clearly annoying.
It just
most
becomes
of us.
cheesy.
It's super cheesy.
It's very dated.
Yeah, no one really cares about that stuff anymore. And if people look at it like that, well, that's their fault for living under a rock. So, I think that concludes this episode of our review of Darling.
One question, though. Would you watch it again?
Oh, definitely. I would like to watch it for things that I might not have picked up because, you know, speaking on a more emotional level, I do think that I missed some things just because I was more focused on the story. But I would like to give it a second view just to, you know, let that creep under my skin, I guess.
Not only would I watch it again, it would be if I did watch it again, it would probably be my third time, because watching it a second time, I caught a little more of what was going on, because the first time I saw it, I was really blown away, and then the second time I watched it, I was like, okay, like, I didn't feel like I just jumped the gun on this. But not only would I watch it again, but I would actually go out of my way to own it. It is not the best movie, but I feel like it's one of the better movies
that's been coming out. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's we both recommend it. So if you're just a lover of cinema and you like movies that build up on tension, this one's definitely a movie that you should check out. And if you have seen it, go ahead and put your opinions below, because we love to hear different views. We're not trying to debate. These are obviously our opinions and what we received from the movie. But we do love to hear other people's opinions. So if you have anything good to say, bad to say about the movie, because we had both to say, go ahead and put them in the comments below.
And we'll see you next time.